we're joined from Washington by Mr. Dennis Jaffe, a strategic affairs expert, and Mr. Dan Rene, a political analyst. Thank you both for joining me here on Think Tank.
Yep.
Mr. Jaffe, let's start off with you. Does Mamdani's subway and oath with this Quran signal some sort of new American soft power, one rooted in pluralism, or is it just, policy, a way of showing that, Mamdani is a man of the people?
Reham, good to be with you. Merhaba, good to be on here with you and Dan to talk about these issues. I don't think it has necessarily significance with respect to soft power internationally. However, it shows the power of symbolism with respect to the international culture of the symbolism of the Quran and Schomburg, as well as Black history and speaking to the Black citizens of New York City, as well as Muslims and Black Muslims, bringing it all together. It was a wonderful encapsulation of the unifying message that was part of his speech.
Okay, Mr. Rene, now, do you think Mamdani, part of his appeal here is obviously that he's young and he's appealing to the young people. Do you think that Mamdani, his youth-led coalition, marks an end to the way politics was in the past, where it's led by these older, the old guard, I suppose, of both Republicans and Democrats?
Well, and again, and thank you so much, and Happy New Year to you. What it comes down to, I guess the question you're asking here is whether Mamdani was able to defeat the machine politics of New York. And I think the larger question here is whether he can govern without becoming a part of it. There's a lot of symbolism in his victory here, but New Yorkers don't live in symbolism. They live in systems. I think this election was less about this generational realignment and more about just fatigue. I mean, for a city that never sleeps, I don't think that New Yorkers necessarily woke up one day deciding tired of dysfunction. They woke up tired of scandals. It's a city that feels harder and harder to live in every year. And these voters were boxed into a corner, especially young people, and they didn't necessarily endorse a philosophy with Mamdani. They took a roll of the dice so they could have something that was changed. They didn't really have much of another choice. And so I do think that Mamdani might be an anti-machine candidate, but I think this wasn't more of a revolution as much as it was a reshuffling. And I do think that Mamdani is going to face a realization here that he's going to have to become a little bit more of a part of the machine versus just try to defeat it over and over again.
So if I could just follow up there, do you think that Mamdani might not be so successful during his term as mayor because he's going to be, fighting from within the system of New York?
Again, he's got a really tall order. He made a lot of campaign promises, and the fact of the matter is that we're looking at $1 trillion economy. And we can't necessarily live on it with symbolism, hopes, and dreams here. I mean, when we talk about taxing the rich, I mean, there aren't enough rich people to pay for all the promises that he made. So you really don't get the opportunity to freeze rents and expand these entitlements and raise taxes without a functioning private sector. You don't get universal programs without the investment into them. That means capital, that means job creation, that means expanding the economy. And unfortunately, that means a lot of the enemies that Mamdani has already picked during the campaign, specifically Wall Street. And again, you can't save the world if you can't pay the rent.
All right, Dennis, can we get your take here? Now, can this Muslim democratic socialist in Trump's America basically reshape the global credibility of what human rights looks like and inclusion? And also, do you have something to add to what Dan said there about, fighting the system in New York? It's not going to be an easy task.
I think that the most critical component that contributed to Mamdani's success, both in the significant victory in the primary and his significant victory in November as well, is that he spoke to how New Yorkers live their daily lives. They struggle. Cost of living is expensive. The buzzword, the word that is on fire throughout the country today politically, among Democrats as well as among Republicans. It's one word, and Mamdani used it. It's a simple word, affordability. It wasn't even the word affordable. It wasn't high cost of living. The word that he chose, this is about affordability. Trump is using that word. 10 years ago, in December of 2015, then candidate Donald Trump, when he was then 6 months into his campaign for presidency in the 2016 campaign, in December of 2015, he announced, Donald J. Trump, am calling for the complete and total shutdown of Muslims entering the United States. And what happened 10 years after that? He welcomed the Muslim mayor-elect of New York City into the Oval Office. That is change. But what will be the test of his success is whether he can, as Dan said, govern, whether he can achieve solutions and convince the legislature of the state of New York to enact tax increases on those who are wealthy in order to pay for his promises, and then for him to be able to successfully implement them.
Okay, Dan, now you talked a bit about Wall Street here. Now, can he govern as a socialist while picking battles with Wall Street, as you said, as well as trying to keep, the police commissioner, Jessica Tisch, somewhat happy? It's a balancing act, isn't it?
Well, of course. And the expectations here, and again, I couldn't agree more about the affordability issue. That is one that is going to continue to be a big issue in politics and in policy for the next several years. But yeah, with keeping the police commissioner, some of that is a realization that, again, New York is an ecosystem. You can't put too much stress on any one ecosystem all at once and expect to get beneficial change. I mean, again, the process is one that's going to have to move slowly. And just like Donald Trump had made some promises, early on, he's starting to realize, and Mamdani will certainly realize too, that progress comes slowly. And it's not just Wall Street that he's got this battle with. You've got public sector unions, you've got state boards, you've got Albany, that is going to, have a lot of resistance to some of this change. And, in fact, I mean, and again, the affordability issue is a big one. But again, you can't get there simply by taxing the rich. There isn't enough tax revenue there. There aren't enough rich people there to pay these taxes. There isn't enough money in the system to make these promises a reality. And so to do that, it's going to require growth. It's going to require job creation, and it's going to require more cooperation within the system. And so I do think that Mamdani and Donald Trump is going to have to realize as well that you're going to get a lot better with cooperation. You're going to get a lot better with dialogue than you are going to be with a complete assault on the system, because, again, that's going to simply backfire, and you're going to be frustrated and not make nearly the progress you hope to make.
But then, since you brought up Donald Trump there, Mamdani was able to meet Donald Trump, and the positions have softened towards Mamdani from Trump. Do you think that Mamdani will be able to smooth things over with the rest of New York as well, since he was able to get to Trump?
I think that it's going to be a challenge regardless. Again, the problems are real. The lack of money is real. I mean, from the national standpoint, we're $38 trillion in debt. New York is a $1 trillion economy. And when you're looking at making these public sector investments, again, this takes a lot of money, whether that is expanding police officers, whether that's expanding protections or making buses free. Public safety is going to become a major issue in New York, just as it's become in places like California, where the woke ideology continues to be embraced. And when you see this ideology embraced, you see an assault on the job creators out there. They vote with their feet and they start to leave. And so you're going to have more and more problems there when it comes to making these things a reality. And again, I think that Mamdani is going to realize very quickly that, again, people are thirsting for the affordability. They're thirsting for this change that he's bringing in terms of the symbolism in the campaign speeches. But we need to figure out a way to cooperate to make that a reality when it comes to governing.
Okay, Dennis, your take here. Now, New York is a counterweight to Washington's sort of nationalistic depth there. Or do you think there's more to it, I suppose, when it comes to a rupture between New York and Washington? And do you agree with Dan as well that Mamdani is going to wake up to a reality that his dream of making things affordable is just not as easy as he thinks it is.
Well, there's no question that it's not going to be easy. There is no question of that. For example, Governor Hochul, who is up for re-election this year now, needs to, or at least thinks that she needs to appeal to more conservative voters in suburban counties throughout the state. And the Republican nominee is likely to be the county executive of Nassau County, which is immediately outside of New York City, where, if you will, former New York City residents fled to the suburbs because they wanted a different way of life, if you will, and they have a fear of, there's a man from Uganda who, with a South Asian culture, who is Muslim, and he's a democratic socialist, all of those things. You know, it's like he has horns on his head for a lot of voters around the state who Hochul feels she will need to appease. And that will also go for the state legislature as well. There is no question that it is challenging. As far as symbolism and whether it's a rupture or whether it's titrating, if you will, the relationship between Washington and D.C. and New York City and progressives and centrists, it's all of the above. There's no more potent example of showing that things are dynamic than President Trump calling him a communist and mispronouncing his name and endorsing Cuomo on the eve of the election. Then a month later, he has Mamdani in the Oval Office. And when the press asked Mamdani if he still feels that Trump is a fascist, and he went, how do I answer that? Trump said, go ahead, just let them know that that's what you called me. It's easier. Trump was actually, dare I say, gracious for a moment.
So, Dennis, if I can just follow up there, do you think that, or agree there with Dan, that some of the ambitious things that, Mamdani is setting out to do, like the free buses, may cause logistical problems and even, increase crime, for instance? Because this was a talking point by many of his opposers.
Well, the way that it could have a negative effect on crime is actually if it succeeds to the point where it actually gets enacted and funded, first of all. And yes, that would be a concern if it succeeds and if it gets approved, that there is a concern that there could be an increase in crime, and that has to be dealt with. There's no question, because it would be bad if you were to be able to get it approved and then there are problems with it. That does not advance his agenda of affordability politically with the people. But I think that what you need to look at is he has to activate and galvanize and empower and amass the power of those who wanted him elected, those who voted for him, those who didn't vote for him, but who also want affordability in the city of New York. Mm-hmm. And he needs to galvanize them with a call to arms and get them and their brothers and sisters and supporters around the state of New York to contact their state legislators with emails and phone calls and questions at events, as well as the governor, as well as the Republican candidate for governor, and get people to say, are you supporting the affordability agenda for my life? That's what it will come down to help him be successful in getting his agenda approved.
Okay, Dan, by revoking Adams' orders on day one, is he actually, in your opinion, healing New York or deepening its political fractures?
Well, that's a great question. When Adams was on his way out, he certainly wasn't a popular mayor by any means. But he leaves behind, Adams leaves behind, and mayors before him, kind of the unglamorous side of power. Boards, commissions, housing authorities. These aren't just policies that Mamdani was able to abandon. Because the people are still left behind. Those people are the ones who sit on the bodies that actually implement, accelerate, or in this case, probably quietly stall this signature agenda that Mamdani has. I mean, we saw this on the federal level during Trump's first term, what he termed the deep state, those obstacles to implementing that agenda. And so I think that we're going to realize that there is that the machine that's underneath all this, that's calibrated for previous leadership, a machine that's calibrated essentially to be against some of these changes that Mamdani is suggesting. And I agree that it's going to take that pressure from the people on affordability to continue to make it go from the campaign mindset to a policy mindset. Because let's be real, rent freezes don't pass through speeches. They pass through regulatory boards, legal reviews, and administrative bottlenecks. And so if Mamdani wants to govern, not just campaign, he's got to master this terrain and master it fast.
Okay, Dennis, could Mamdani's model somehow inspire the Global South? Because people around the world were very invested in this mayoral campaign as well. Do you think that his battle for equality and his social justice and all of that can somehow translate to other countries or other cities around the world?
I think it's possible in that his nomination in last June, or September rather, and let me go back, in June, that his nomination as well as his victory in November, I think that they are inspiring to others around the world, those who want to take on power, people who share his demographics, people who are younger and not necessarily younger. For example, we look at Senator Bernie Sanders, who swore him in, and Bernie Sanders is in his 80s. So it's really about what is the agenda of people, what are their hopes and dreams, what is their political perspective, and do they see not only inspiration from Mamdani, but do they also see that they can adopt some of his populist language in order to help propel them to success in their election landscapes in other cities around the world.
Okay, Dan, now, do you think his outreach to skeptics of genuine unity, or is it strategic optics when it comes to New York, especially that the city voted 2-1 against him in the Upper East Side?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. You're not going to be able to govern effectively without trying to find a way to at least unify some of those voices that are against you and some of the voters that chose a different pathway. When you campaign, you're just trying to get a majority of the votes that are out there. But when you govern, you're representing everyone, those that were for you as well as those that were against you. And it's going to be a lot easier to have more folks that are supporting your agenda than those that, or at least understanding where you are, not standing in the way and becoming an obstacle and trying to find a pathway to work together. And so that machinery that Mamdani has to deal with, whether it's traditional opposition or his opposition within the people that support him the most because they don't see things happening fast enough. I think that we'll see some collisions along the way. We'll see some mistakes, but hopefully we'll see some early successes too. I don't think that there's anyone that once after the election day is over and people are sworn in, I don't think that anyone wants necessarily their leaders to fail, because failure is detrimental to everyone, regardless as to what party you're in. So I do think that there can be a way to try to make these pathways forward, to try to show the benefits of the policies. And again, with all sides trying to claim, as this point was made earlier, as all sides try to make this affordability and claim that word, if he can make the case that this affordability is good for everyone, then I think that's going to be the win. And if he can claim that and prove that, that's going to be the win for Mamdani and a win for New York and a win for America, frankly.
Okay, Dennis, now the key word here is affordability. Do you think that his $7 billion affordability plan somehow challenges the neoliberal orthodoxy in America's financial capital?
Well, it does in the sense that over the last few decades, especially, for example, since Bill Clinton ran successfully for president in 92 and reelected in 96, appealing to the middle in America and in the Democratic Party as a neoliberal, if you will. So yes, it does run counter to that. But I think that what's key with Mamdani is to remember that his agenda, while it is ideologically based, he communicated it in terms that New Yorkers related to. This is about their daily lives. And so I think that what's key is looking at this not as Mamdani's affordability agenda, but for each person in New York, because I don't live in New York, for each person in New York, it is their affordability agenda, and his challenge is to get them to pressure their state legislators to support their affordability agenda. So yes, it is different, but then again, we had candidates in November in New Jersey for governor and in Virginia for governor and elsewhere around the country talking about affordability. Republicans want to make Mamdani the face of the Democratic Party because he is South Asian, because he is Muslim, because he is a democratic socialist, and those are things that unfortunately scare people in this country. What's key is that he continue to talk in language that resonates with New Yorkers about things that are relevant to their daily life. And what he has to do is get them to convince the state legislature to enact their agenda, not just his. I also want to focus for a second, as you've talked, Raham, about the fact that this will be challenging for not easy for him to get his campaign agenda elected as mayor in governing. It's difficult for him to get support among the New York City legislature, which is a majority Democratic, but establishment Democrat for the most part. We have Democratic majorities in each house in the state legislature, but the state legislature is not New York City. The state legislature represents all of New York State with conservative parts of the state. And so while it was challenging and he succeeded barely, he got 50% plus one in November in a three-way race. Statewide, the demographics are not as supportive of him or his agenda. And so indeed, it is very challenging.
Okay, Dan, let's take your take here. Now, Trump is watching and looking at Mamdani, I suppose. Mamdani, his plan has been called audacious governance. Do you think this is a blueprint or a gamble? Given, of course, that also Trump, when he was running for office, he was running on the idea of affordability and making life easier for the average American.
Yeah, I think overall, this situation, this election, and Mamdani's governing is not going to tell us much more about where America is necessarily going. I think it's a look back to show us how fed up New York actually was leading up to this election, and how fed up the American people are when it comes to these affordability challenges that we've talked about. And so now leaders, Mamdani and Trump, are both facing a very similar challenge. It's one of the oldest challenges in politics, turning this campaign rhetoric, this symbolism, into real systems that work. I mean, the rhetoric is important, but without results, it's not going to go anywhere. Ambition is fantastic as long as there's solvency along with it. So if whether it's Mamdani or whether it's Trump, if they deliver safe streets, if they deliver stable finances, if they deliver real opportunity, jobs, and more prosperity, then it'll define a new model of leadership. If not, this moment of Mamdani's election won't necessarily remember it as a breakthrough, but just another chapter in New York and, frankly, America's long experiment with governing by frustration instead of governing by real results. So I think that we've got some competing ways of looking at things. I think everyone wants to go towards that affordability mantra. Everyone wants to kind of get to that point. But at the same time, it's about how we get there. And I think that what we've seen where this democratic socialism has been tried before, it has failed. And whoever gets there is going to be the winner. And it's going to figure out, how governing it will go in the future.
Okay, Dennis, if we can get your take here as well. Now, Mamdani is sworn in as mayor on Shambagh's Quran. Do you think this is a symbol lightening black intellectual history, Islam, and as well immigration, symbolic, I suppose, for New York? Does this signal a new American identity, a narrative that could reshape U.S. soft power abroad, specifically for New York?
I think it is powerful symbolically. I think it is powerful, particularly in New York City. I think that a relatively high percentage of Black New Yorkers did vote for Cuomo because of the favorable relationship between the Black community and the Cuomo name for decades. I do not think it has national significance. I think that Republicans want to make him the boogeyman and the face of the Democratic Party. What I do think, though, that if we look in terms of success, what I think we need to look at is three things. Yes, he does need to be as bold in governing as he was in the campaign. You asked if it was a gamble. I don't think it's a gamble. I think it's an absolute mandate for him to continue to be bold. He also needs to work with the establishment, as Dan talked about. He needs to be able to, for example, he reappointed the fire chief, the chief of police, and that was important both for continuity and establishment, as well as it being a prominent Jewish family in New York City, talking again about bringing people together. Now, I'm not talking about playing to one religion or one demographic or another. It's about bringing people together. So he needs to be bold. He needs to be able to work with others who are in establishment. And he also needs, as Dan talked about as well, I think he needs to identify some things where he can get some early, quick victories on things that are not as bold, because that will help give him momentum and hope and power with the grassroots.
Okay, thank you so much. That was Dennis Jaffe, a strategic affairs expert, and Dan Rene, a political analyst. Thank you both for your insights, and thank you for joining me here on Think Tank.